Today we're honored to welcome Trevor Stevenson to the show today. Very excited to have him on. He talks about some very important topics, right? What it means to be a man. And many people are kind of struggling with that. And, leadership is such an important topic as well. I personally believe we're all leaders, but we have to activate it within ourselves, right? Instead of just being like a victim to external circumstances, we start to take 100% responsibility. This man has so many different stories and so many different ways that we can actually utilize these concepts within our life, right? And he's helped many people do this. And today we're going to walk away with some valuable takeaways to implement in our own lives, some things we can think about, right? And we can go through our days and kind of like do some self-assessment and improve. And I'm very happy to have him on to share his story and his insights. How you doing today, man?
I'm great, Anthony. Thank you for that. And I love what you say about us all being leaders. Like, if we're aware of the fact that how we show up impacts other people, then that's the definition of leadership, right? How we impact and influence others. So we're all doing it.
100%, man. So I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into what it means to be a man, leadership, all these things that are just amazing things to talk about. Like, what is your story and how are you being of service today?
Hmm. It's I think it's a bit atypical, but and I'll try to keep it short. I grew up in a small town in rural community in eastern Ontario, Canada, and it was a big farm, 500-acre farm. It was the youngest of six kids in 8 years, so it was busy and it was full. Both parents had full-time jobs, and so it was kind of like a hobby farm, But we were so we had to kind of work hard, and if we didn't, we felt that there was sort of a real rule with an iron fist approach to leadership on the farm from my dad, and so we learned to toe the line, and a lot of times that wasn't fun. It was painful, and a lot of times as well, just even being in that community, being in that household, emotionally stagnating. Sorry, and beyond not learning to express emotions well, it was actually a system of oppressing those emotions, and I think so many of us grew up that way. And I hold no malice to the previous generations. They were all just doing the best they could, and I think we're all improving a little bit each time. But I was ready to get off the farm, and I headed out to school knowing that I didn't want more formal education. And so that was short lived, and then I started really living and traveling and following my passions and interests. And I went out to Western Canada and skied and snowboarded and worked. And there I started meeting a lot more people with a lot more open minds and perspectives, and doing things a little bit differently for themselves and with each other. And so that was sort of a foray then into, wow, I don't have to be so harsh or critical or like always poking and pushing, and more of a kindness and a connectedness. And I continued traveling. I traveled the world for a decade, and I got into guiding, and I was leading overland trips and guiding deep sea fishing and diving. I was crewing on yachts and things. So exposed to a lot of different cultures, a lot of different people who were out there doing similar things, or people who were, kind of escaping their reality for a couple of weeks. And so I really started to develop this curiosity as to what drives people one way or another to do the things they do, especially things that their lives they're not really that interested in. Education often ended up as a route to a lot of that. There were people who wanted to travel but didn't because they're in education, and then there were people who got that education so just started working, and they were never really interested in it. It was always a curiosity to me, and so I asked a lot of questions, and people would open up, and we'd be sitting around the campfire, and under the stars by the riverbank or something, having beautiful conversations. And that was kind of the start of my campfire coaching. And then just sort of serendipitously met my wife in another small town and really hit it off. And we came to Ottawa, Canada, and we started this business. We were the youngest licensees in the world of an international organizational leadership development firm called Leadership Management International. And one of the old dogs in it. And so we grew and developed with them, which was really cool, and learned all their systems and coach facilitation, all these business acumen, all of these things we learned from them. but then continued to grow on our own. And I guess the big pivot as we grew through that was when we grew our business to a point where we had a bunch of staff and different coaches working for us, and then the economy tanked. And like kind of 2010 for us, which is when our second child arrived. So we had a 2-year-old and a newborn, and we had our first home and property to take care of and stuff. And that's when the mirror was sort of held up for me, of the way that I was showing up with our staff, the way that I was showing up with my wife, with my kids and stuff. And that's when that conditioned pattern of like the farmer mentality was coming out. And I thought I was doing all the things right, of like just go hard and get it done. But it was pretty intense, and I realized I was showing up like my dad, you know. It was like having to bow down to that reality of the harm that I was doing, and recognizing that I needed to do things differently or I was going to lose it all, and came very close to that, both financially and marital, and started to receive some really great coaching that brought me to this depth of the awareness and the path to overcoming that harm for myself and around others, that has really shifted the way that I work with people now.
I love it, man. Thank you for sharing that. Sounds like you have like a journey where you have all these different experiences, right? And you are really interested in how people show up, right? Showing up is such an important thing. And what does it mean exactly? Like, what does it mean to show up on a day-to-day basis for you?
Well, we're always doing it, right? We're always just showing up, but it's the how we're being when we're doing. So we're always out there doing, right? We're doing breakfast, and we're doing our commute, and we're doing like enter into the business and meet and greet the people, or all of these things we do. But how are we being while we're doing? And so that what that means to me, Anthony, about how we're showing up is like, what state am I in? What is my energy? Because people feel that before they hear you, right? You can say, yeah, good morning, but they it's the same thing. You'll say the next day, hey, good morning. And there's a difference, right? And how we show up and the energy that we bring. And so that impact, again, whether it's home or work or out in your community, it's recognizing that the emotions inside of me are causing me to react in a certain way. And knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, that impact is felt by others. And so the root of that then is, do I care enough about myself and my impact to reconcile, to ground what's going on for me? Because if I'm pissed off, do I want to stay pissed off? Because that just means there's stuff going on, chemical cocktail being dumped by the brain, the adrenaline, the cortisol, things like that. So I'm here aging, and I'm just driving to work, and I'm white knuckled because there's traffic. I'm like, shit, there's traffic every day, man. How do I want to be with that traffic? The dishes just keep piling up every day. How do I want to be with that? The staff deliver this thing again that isn't the way I like it. How do I want to be with that? And so that's the how we show up. It's first reconciling, recognizing what's going on for me, and taking care of myself, building connection with what's going on for me, so then I can be in better connection with the people around me. That's how they perceive me as showing up.
I love it. Those are some great points there, man. I mean, that can be difficult to do sometimes, right? Because life happens. We don't always feel great. So how can we start to develop this mindset of like doing our best and having a positive attitude and all these things, even if like things around us don't seemingly have this optimality to them?
Great point. And that's the making it tangible, right? And there's this perception as well, and there's a lot of I don't know, let's say dogma, but like a lot of theory about positivity, and that we have to be that way. I think most importantly, we just have to recognize how we are, and then ask ourselves how we want to be. It might be that we want to feel connected. It might be that we want to feel calm. It might be that we have a need for belonging, right? And so that's going to inspire different choices within us if we can have that wherewithal. And so foremost, it's pausing, which we're not really great at, Anthony. We're just reactive. We're reactive, right? And we're in judgment. We're in judgment of other people. We're in judgment of ourselves. And if we can just kind of slow the tape down a little bit and be aware of how we're feeling, right? And what are the thoughts that are creating that? And it's usually a fear thought of, I am not enough. I'm not loved enough. I don't have enough. There isn't enough time, money, resources, anything, right? And that is the linchpin right there. If we can slow down long enough to recognize how we feel in a moment, then I mean, we're going to talk about it more here, because I want people to really get it. What do you do then with that information? Because like I said, most of us, the self-awareness, the emotional intelligence has been conditioned out of us through abuse, ridicule, whatever, fear, right?
Definitely, man. Yeah, I feel like keeping our purpose on top of mind, knowing what we do, it makes it so much easier, because if we're rooted in our values and things like that, when things are hard, it's a lot easier to stay on alignment and act how we want to, right? But if we're scattered and our energy is not where we want it to be, it's just like, the passion is kind of like driving our decisions sometimes. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you bring both of those things, our purpose and our values, right? And oftentimes as well, this purpose thing can be daunting, right? It's like, oh wait, I don't know, do I want to end world hunger, or do I just want to get through this day, right? But so the values can make it much more of a connected thing, and what we value is at the root as well of, like Marshall Rosenberg would call it, our needs in nonviolent communication. He would talk about our needs, and those needs are really synonymous with what are my values. And so what we will find is that when we're out of alignment and we're feeling like an amygdala hijack or just some sort of tension within us, there's a value that's not being met for us in that moment. And what is that I value so much? And for you, that might be health and fun and connection and things like that. And for me, it might be movement and progress and work ethic and things like this, right? And so everyone has a different set of values that are important, and we're all reactive when those needs aren't met. And so absolutely knowing what those are, and then working on purpose as well is something I think ikigai, to be working towards that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, because as you mentioned, like when we're in those moments, we have like perhaps certain thoughts that we're thinking, and different ways that are kind of habitual patterns, right? And if we have this power of self-assessment, in a sense, we can kind of see what we're doing, see how we're responding in certain situations, right? And then we can improve upon that, instead of just having these reactions that we have that are just on repeat, that aren't desirable in our own life.
Yeah, it's so true, and I love that, like how what you're suggesting here is it really is a journey, right? And because we can also expect, oh God, I just listened to Anthony's podcast, damn it, I should know better. I just got I got triggered again by that thing, and I said I wouldn't, and then we get down on ourselves, and so we're like mad about being mad, and we continue that pattern versus like recognizing it and kind of that metacognition of like, oh geez, I did that thing, okay, yeah, I recognize it, but I've got 30, 40, 50 years of conditioning doing it a certain way. So don't expect that half-hour podcast or that year of meditation is just going to mean you're no longer going to be triggered by these things. It's just an absolute journey, and the least reactive we can be to those things, the simpler it gets for us.
Definitely.
And I almost like a smile. I was like, oh geez, I did that thing again. That's funny. That makes sense.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you got to give yourself grace in the process, because you're going to mess up sometimes. It's not about being perfect, but it's about progress. Understanding that everything we do is an opportunity to get better. Just kind of looking at it as a process. And the thing is that there always will be a process. There's no there in a sense. We have to own this moment, understand that it's kind of the nature of life is growth, right? And we just got to keep on moving. And it's a journey in and of itself.
Yeah, I love that. I talk a lot about it's just practice, right? And we wouldn't expect when we're out there playing football or soccer or lacrosse or water polo or whatever the heck we play, we have practices and then we have game time, right? And nobody's going to get upset for trying new things and screwing up a pass or whatever we're practicing. It's just like that's what this is there for. We try new plays and we communicate differently and all these things, but it's always so serious in life. And I like to think, okay, hey, I'm just practicing parenting here. I'm just practicing husbanding. I'm practicing CEOing. Every day I'm just practicing. It's okay. I'm gonna get it wrong.
Yeah, man. Like, I think it's important to bring energy to a situation, right? Because we can't control the external circumstances. There's always going to be things that aren't desirable. But if we can show up internally, and then we can actually have powerful influence around us, not controllable, we can actually be a light in the situation, in a sense.
Yeah. Again, influence versus control. Such a great point. Again, and I talk a lot about connection before control, because so many of us, again, men especially, we try to control a situation. We get uncomfortable when we don't have control over a situation. But then the reality is, like you say, there's so few situations that we can actually control. But then we try to overpower in situation. We try to outthink things. We try to solutionize everything that, like, even when someone comes to us, right, it's like, oh, let me fix it. And so we're trying to control that situation versus just connecting with what's really going on. And then we do it in parenting and things like that, and in all of our relationships. And that's when separation happens. And so connection first, and then the influence happens.
100%. Leadership is another topic that you talk a lot about. Can you define what that is to you, and how we can kind of start to cultivate that within our own lives?
Yeah, we mentioned this at the outset of leadership, in my mind, being the way that we influence those around us. And as we've been talking, we're always doing that. My kids come in off the bus at the end of the day, they already feel my energy. And so I'm leading in that way, in that moment. Unless you're living in a cave off on your own somewhere, then you're a leader. Your impact is felt. And so if you care enough about the impact, the ripple that you have on others, then it really begins, Anthony, for me, in the work that I do, with self-leadership. It starts with that aspect of, am I taking care of myself? Am I being the way that I want to be? Am I feeling the way that I want to feel? So that ripple that is felt, whether I want it to be or not, is going to produce more positive, more idealistic outcomes with those around me. And so that's it. My influence is just, what am I exuding as a leader? Because everyone, all the strategy and the MBA stuff, that's all, people can learn that, and it can be methodical. It's the people stuff, the human aspect, that kind of throws everyone, right? Because we didn't take any courses on that. We didn't learn how to be with our own thoughts and emotions, let alone anyone else's. That's the work.
For sure. I mean, our choices and our decisions are so important, right? And every single decision we make, it's going to impact everyone around us as well, right? And this is why, like, I like to say, never put immediate gratification over the long-term mission, right? Because we always put, like, immediate gratification over certain things. And it's important to understand, like, that the purpose and fulfillment, having goals and living in line with integrity and all these values, that's the most optimal way, even though it may not seem like that in the moment. But we actually overcome ourselves, right? It's a process of overcoming you, right? And you overcome yourself, and you actually kind of level up, in a sense, and become better for people around you too.
Yeah, totally. And I love hearing that from you. It's a hard thing, I think, for the marshmallow tests and all those things. It's just human nature, right? No, I want the cookie now. I know you'll give me 2 cookies if I wait, but I want it now. And you see that raising kids. I see it in myself. You talked about that immediate gratification. I say, joking, not joking, that my need for short-term freedom gets in the way of my need for long-term freedom. It's like, no, I don't want to sit down and be penned to my desk and have to do all these things because I want to be out. But if I lock in and get it done, then I can retire, sooner, kind of thing. Um, but so I dance with that that there needs to be a focus and a locking in and getting done the things that need to get done. Now, as my Instagram handle says, "Fun Road to Freedom." I also like to look at how I'm being, my locking in. What does that mean? It's like, Anthony, let's go out for a walk and talk. Let's meet and solve the world's problems. It doesn't mean I need to be, and that's, again, it's like that farmer mentality. No, I need to be here. I need to be doing this and da, 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 da. Not necessarily.
Yeah, man. I feel like it's so important to give ourselves a space to think, right? Because when we're talking about showing up and all these things, a lot of times it's hard to do if we're stressed and our minds are scattered. So giving ourselves like a space and knowing how to transition throughout things throughout the day, just giving ourselves like some calm down time, just like little brief moments throughout the day. I think that's so important to kind of like center yourself and just be ready.
And it doesn't need to be massive. We were talking about our love of outdoors, the forest bathing that has been monikered kind of popularly now. And I love that the prescriptions are being given for outdoor and for park access and stuff like that. But it also doesn't need, it's hard if you're sitting in traffic or if you're in the middle of a performance review meeting to say, oh, okay, well, I can only reach calm if I can go outside for a half-hour walk. We need that moment to moment, right? And so that's where the different tactics that we're practice of meditation, or in a moment just knowing that you can access calm through the breath, right? So just doing box breathing, or there's a whole host of different approaches, to draw our attention to something other than our worried mind. And so knowing that moment to moment I'm going to be triggered by things, so I also need a moment to moment practice that's going to bring me back to the grounding.
That's so key, man. It's like also we can build up our cognitive reserve in a sense, right? Because we have these practices, like if we have these stillness throughout the day, and if we've kind of built up that sense of relaxation, and then we get into those stressful moments, it's gonna be a lot easier as opposed to the opposite if we're going into it as stressed. So that cognitive reserve. Also, I feel like living in line with integrity and all these things, like having the internal strength. So, like when you're in that moment, it makes it much more easier to navigate it too.
100% agree. Yeah, these habits and patterns that we shape throughout our days are critical, right? And so
Yeah.
it means some discipline, right? It means saying yes to getting up half an hour early for yoga, which means saying no to scrolling for that extra half hour at night.
Yeah. So small decisions, man, that all add up. Like those daily choices. So it's like sometimes we've got to evaluate and see how this is going to affect how we show up in a sense. Like our decisions tonight going to set us up for a better position tomorrow, and just keeping these things on top of mind. Because again, it's so easy, but man, if you just it's kind of like a muscle as well. Like you do this over time, and as we mentioned before, it's a practice, and you realize that hey, this is actually a lot easier, and those decisions they become more graceful and more effortless over time. I see too.
And compounding.
100%. Yeah, because
I love that cognitive.
it's like
Sorry.
kind of yeah, kind of reserve, right? It's so like because
Yeah.
when it compounds, I mean, kind of goes like success is like compound interest, right? And we kind of build on top of each other. It's almost like habit stacking, like you add on top of these
Yeah.
things, and it helps you reach your goals a lot faster.
It is. It's money in the bank or calm in the bank, and when you need it, you can go there.
Yeah, man. Like first we make our habits, then our habits make us, right? So just keeping these positive habits on top of mind and everything we can do, and then going back to goals and values, it's just such an important topic. So
And it's nice, like the work that you're doing and sharing with people that they can drop in, they can access this on their drive, on their walk, on their bike ride. And it's things like this that build that for us, that cognitive reserve, and partnering, finding the people. And this is what I mean about coming out to like men's group or just a holistic practice with others, a yoga center that does meditation and things. It's like, who are the other people that are already doing this that I can link arms with? And I know I'm not the only one doing it, and I'm there for them when they're having some challenges. And I know that they're for me
100%.
as well.
Yeah, the people you surround yourself with is so important. Like having those high quality connections and the sense of purpose within that, it makes things a lot more fun and easy. Yeah. So you talk a lot about emotions as well, right? What is the power of emotions? How does that influence our life on a day-to-day basis?
Jeez, the emotions they can really be running the show. And it's behind the scenes. So most of us are just making choices and taking action based on our emotions. I'm angry, I kick the dog kind of thing, metaphorically speaking. So I'm lonely, and so I go surf porn. I feel a sense of lack of worthiness, and so I go shopping or spend money on credit cards, and I feel bored, so I go gambling. Without being conscious, and so we have these go-to like default habits, which a lot of times can be harmful. And so what's behind that emotion is a need. As I was saying earlier, there's an unmet need or a met need. And it's like, oh my gosh, I just saw that little puppy playing in the grass, and that just met my need for joy, and so that's great. But I just stepped in dog shit when I walked out the door, and so my need for cleanliness and timeliness, because I was on my way to work, is not being met right now, and there goes my day, So behind each of those emotions is a need, and if we can become aware of the emotion as information, just data. It's like, what is this emotion telling me? Oh, okay, it's telling me that I have a need for calm right now. So many of us, that's our first thing, right? We're triggered, amygdala hijacked, right? It's like fight or flight. And so the first need is most often calm. And then we go back to that breathing exercise, or a walk in the woods, or give me 20 push-ups, or put on some great music and dance, or whatever you have access to. And that's the cool thing. When you slow this down, you use that emotion as information, as data to tell you what you need. Now that I know that, I have a need for calm. Anthony, what do you do for calm? If you need calm, what are 3 things that you do for calm?
Yeah, personally, man, I love meditation. And we talked about like forest bathing. I love taking walks out in nature. And man, contemplation is so important. Just being able to be in alignment, like organize your mind, organize your thoughts, and just stay ready, right? Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Like living in the flow and all these things. I feel like having so many positive habits throughout the day, like journaling, working out, all these things, it makes it very difficult to stay down, right? If you just keep on moving forward throughout the day, something is going to pick you up at some point, man. So just like living on purpose is very peaceful.
Yeah, and that's it. And so that's being conscious, right? And so the unconscious, if someone needs calm, then we're like, oh, God, I need a smoke, or I got to light up a joint, or I need a drink, right? And so these are the harmful patterns that we maladapted over all of the years. And maybe it's the influence of the people around me, how we saw our parents adapt to like whatever they felt, fear, anger, sadness. It's they need calm, and so they go to that crutch. Whereas if we know it's just a need for calm that we have in that moment, and we can step back and say, oh, Google, what can I do to be calm right now? Brrr, here's 1,000 things, and then you get to choose And what we also realize is that we have reactive patterns. We have almost starting gate emotions when things in our lives happen. For a lot of us, and men especially, anger is the first thing. So I know, and then we go to somatics. So where do I feel that anger? Because that's like the canary in the coal mine, right? Like, oh, my shoulders, my jaw, my chest, my neck, whatever. I feel that, and so we want to be conscious of where I feel that in my body, because then I might not notice the conversation going in my head. I might not be able to name the emotion right away. Why would I? I've never done it. But if I can then know, like, oh, my jaw gets tight, it's like, oh, there it is. That's just my anger thing coming up. I know what I need. And I'll, then I start getting fit because I do push-ups every time that I get angry. It's like, oh, damn. I get angry 20 times a day and I do 20 push-ups every time. I just did 400 push-ups, Nice.
Right, man.
Um,
I love that. It's
and
like,
so,
yeah, I mean, I feel like we can develop a level of mastery with this as well. Because going back to art of showing up, if you stay consistent with these things, you're going to learn different ways of how to do them. Like you experiment and see what works for you, right? But if you give into that thing, it's like you're not really learning. Again, going back to giving yourself grace, it's not about being perfect, but the more you can do this, you can learn and see what works for you, and you get better at it over time. And it's just like live in the flow much more, and it's much more graceful too.
yeah, it's our personal power, right? And it's like, it's our God-given right to flex that, and we all have it. With very few things that we have control over in our lives, but the things that we do are the way that I think and the actions that I choose to take. And so let's use that power.
Yeah, for sure. You had mentioned how emotions are data and feedback. I love that. It's so important to think about it like that, right? Because we can go throughout our day and we can actually kind of observe how we feel. And you also had mentioned like a lot of it is based off our needs, like unmet needs or just things like kind of evaluating like where's this coming from. Let's kind of like become more emotionally intelligent, right? Like, why am I feeling this way? Do I want to feel this way? Is there a way I can move past this and kind of learn in a sense?
Yeah, and so great to question those too, Anthony, um, because we have these, values that we have named that are so strong for us. And kids are great if we've raised them to be confident enough to question our authority and direction. Then they're like, why? Why do I have to do it that way? Why do I have to do it now? And like, again, there's an instant like, because I said so, because I'm the man of the house. And if we just swallow that down for a sec and know that, like, my jaw just got tight, I need calm, and then I can be in connection with myself, which means I can be in connection and hear other people. Empathy for myself means I can have empathy for you. And not that you can't without it, it's just a heck of a lot easier if I've done the work on myself first. And we can start to question those things. And again, if there's people that you can talk to in your life, whether it's your spouse or your mentor or your therapist or your coach or your group, your men's group, then it's like, yeah, this is happening, and people can kind of call you on your bullshit then too. It's like, is that wrong? So wrong? Is that bad? And it's like you can step back, and it's like, whew, overcoming some of those habits and patterns, ways of thinking. It's like, okay, well, I guess it's not that important, huh? Or it really is important to me, and then we have a connected conversation about it then, versus just trying to overpower, control about why it's important to me, why this need exists for me. We can advocate for it and communicate, and it doesn't mean that people are going to honor that, but we have a much better chance of now in that leadership and the influence.
100%. Power of accountability is so key. Like having like some other inputs and see how we can evaluate and self-assess through that, and also do that to other people as well. Just being able to kind of you know be a mirror in a sense. Like, hey, how can I improve? And all these things. Like just power of questions is important as well.
Yeah, huge, and I love that. I love questions versus directive.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of mentioned a little bit like the power of our thinking, right? Like what we're thinking on a day-to-day basis, is taking responsibility for that, right? And it's not to say like everything that we think is going to be controlled, right? Because I feel like a lot of thoughts are automatic as well, but we can control how we respond to it, and just being able to kind of navigate that in a sense, right? Because the more high quality thoughts we think, and kind of more are in alignment with that, it's like it's going to lead to the external world and how we take action, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Our internal world creates our external world.
yeah, for sure. If people are looking to like, man, they just want to think differently about things, like where do they start? Like, of course, like being centered on all these things is so important, but like, are any practical things that you would have people do?
Yeah, for sure. And you've introduced that by if they want to think differently about things. And I think the first thing then is to recognize how we're currently thinking about things. Because every thought has an attached emotion. When I think I'm not enough, I feel sad and depressed. When I think you've done me wrong, I feel frustrated, angry. So it's first to recognize how I'm thinking and just write that down. Like thought, emotion. I'll start journaling that. It's like, and it's usually one of those two things. I don't like the way that I'm thinking, or I don't like the way that I'm feeling. Recognize that those two things are inextricably connected. And so then we can ask ourselves, well, how do I want to be feeling? And if I'm feeling, if I know that I think I'm not if I'm thinking this thought, I am not enough, or I'm not loved enough, whatever that might be. And every time I think that, I'm feeling sad and lonely and depressed. Then recognize that the only thing that we can choose is that we, or sorry, that we can really control is that thinking. And if
For
we
sure.
shift the thinking, then we
Yeah.
can shift the emotion. And again, I don't want to oversimplify, but if I'm feeling depressed and sad and lonely, what is my need? So now you're adding a need in there, and you've got your thoughts, and you've got your emotions, and your needs. So if I'm feeling, if I think that I'm not enough, then I feel sad and lonely, and then what do I have a need for? Maybe I have a need for connection. I have a need for love, which we'll usually put self in front of it, self-love. Or I'll have a need for play. And now again, we can go to our options, our buffet of options, and say, well, what would be at the buffet of fun? Well, geez, I'd go bowling, or I'd call this friend, or I'd put on this movie, or whatever. If I have a need for self-love, what would be at that buffet? Well, maybe I'd look at the different things I've achieved in my life. I'd look at the notes that I've saved of the people who appreciate me. I'd scroll back through, or I just text mom, and
Yeah.
just feel that love. And so that we can be in action, and it's, we've been talking about it, you've mentioned it, Anthony, it's just like, this is a practice. It's like drip, 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 because we're already dripping the other way. We've got such neural pathways grooved so deep from decades of doing it a certain way, because somewhere along the line I was receiving the message that I am not worthy, and I started believing that, and my thinking started following that pattern, and now those synapses are firing together, and the neurons that fire together wire together. And so we're talking neuroplasticity right now. Every time I feel that in my body, where does loneliness and depressed feel in my body? Heavy in my chest, or my stomach, or my throat. I feel that, oh wait, yeah, I was just thinking these thoughts about like how shitty I am. Okay, pause. What do I need right now? Oh, I need fun, I need fresh air, I need outdoors, I need exercise. Let me do that. Okay. New neural
Yeah.
pathway, just drip, one little shot. And if you do that over 10 times this week, 20 times next week. You know, we start noticing the physiological response in the body. We start noticing the thoughts that led to that emotion, that led to that physiological response, knowing that I have a need for something right now, choosing to act on that need to take care of myself in a positive and healthy way. We start rewiring the brain. Like you were just saying, it gets easier, it compounds. And then we start being that light for others, which is so beautiful. Now we're in that leadership, right?
100%, man. So key. It's like the power of self-awareness and utilizing these tools is so important because, as you said, we're already doing it. So the question is, how do you want to show up, right? And it's so important. You talked about the power of communication and all those things that like kind of interplay, and they're all acting synergy, right?
Yeah, because we're already communicating as well. We're always communicating. Do we like the way that we're doing it? Do we like the way it feels? Do we see the impact it has on others? It's just a little bit of standing back and slowing and knowing where we have control, because so many people think that they don't, right? Oh, it's just who I am. I'm wired that way, you know? And it's like, oh, that's how I grew up. Well, neuroplasticity is real. You're doing it till the day you die, right? Or not.
Yeah. Just learning how to communicate in an intelligent manner, right? I feel like it starts with ourselves, like how are we talking to ourselves, like the power of self-talk and, like just being aware of these things as they come up and just kind of navigating that. And as we mentioned, like just improve over time, just practice.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of fun too, right? You just kind of you go throughout your day. It's like, because what you're doing is you're building your character, which is really the foundation of your life in a sense. Like, because I feel like all these challenges that we go through, they're meant to forge our character in order to live the life that we're meant to lead. And okay, now we're getting better. Okay, now I'm reaching our goals, right? So we kind of like build this positive momentum, and you kind of on this virtuous circle, and it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, totally. And giving yourself grace too when you're having a shitty day, or if it's just not working or you didn't do it right that time, you know, if you slipped into the old pattern and habit, give yourself that grace. It's like, all right, well, don't throw away the whole batch here because of one rotten apple. Just like let that be that moment, and just let yourself know that you're human and you're practicing, and I'm going to get back on this horse.
Yeah. Because failure is feedback, right? A lot of us just want to give up when things are hard, but if we can learn from these things and start to ask more empowering questions instead of being a victim, start to be a victor, right? So what can I learn from this? How can I embrace this? How can I, grow through this and actually be a light and a teacher on the other side?
Yeah.
Because I feel like when we're in this victim state, man, it's like it just makes things so much more dark, and it's like we don't see possibility. But if you open up yourself to possibility and how things can be different, and that's where the growth takes place.
Yeah, and in these states, well, the drama triangle that you're referring to there, the victim state, we're in an amygdala hijack state, right? Our brain is in fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn, any of those Fs, and so we can't show up as our best. The glucose in the blood flow is not to the prefrontal cortex, so we're not thinking rationally and in a connected way and structured and planned. And so we're just reactive to a threat state, which is, in place for our survival, but these things are not survival situations. And so we've just adapted to make them seem like life or death. And so our body's responding in that way. So we're always on high alert, and that's hard on the body.
100%.
Aging and disease and all sorts of tough stuff.
Yeah. Lastly, you talk about breaking the cycle. What does that mean? How can we start to take control of that and, kind of forge a legacy of greatness?
I love that. And we've been talking about it, right? That is our leadership, if especially for those parents out there, but all of us as leaders who are showing up in the world and influencing others, if we choose to be the example, then everything's changing around us, and you won't see it day one and immediately, but sometimes you do. Like if you choose a different response, whereas people are expecting a fight from you, and you step back and you take a breath and you ask for whatever, 5 minutes or 5 days, if you can, not 5 days maybe, but I need to think about this. Can I come back? It's just like, you're going to see people's like, what? Huh? Because you need two people to be in that. Well, you don't need two, but if you step out of that drama triangle, it ceases to exist.
Right.
And so that is the opportunity of creating the legacy, by being the example, by doing the work. And that's all we can do. And then, continue to be out in the world, and have the confidence to be different. That you're not going to be road raging and yelling at your kids and, stoic, separate from your spouse, and that you're going to choose to practice things like this and get it wrong and invite people in to the practice. This practice and the openness.
It's being a light and a mile for what's possible, right? If you were to recommend, like, if people get started, like, what are the steps in that direction? Like, just kind of like simplify that and just start that process.
I think it is this slowing down, Anthony. It's not an easy thing in this world that we're living in. We're hyper connected, but we're so disconnected, especially from self. And so I think the simplest thing we can do is just reflect, like, at any time in the day, at the end of the day, like, what were the emotions that came up? Where did I feel triggered? What do they mean? Ideally, you do it closer to each situation. So if you realize there's tension in your body, if you realize there's a thing that you said or did that is just sitting with you, recurring, and that's another big one. If you notice your mind running and having conversations about situations that, like, the other person's not even there, but you're having the whole conversation, it's a great time to just pause and recognize what's going on in your body. Are you tense? And take that breath. Just, I think that's the simplest thing, to just really try to pause and notice how our thinking is connected to our emotions and our physical body response. Just take some breaths, like literally take 3 breaths. It's so hard. Like, by the time, people get impatient by the end of one deep breath. They're like, okay, I'm there. It's like, and then move on. It's like, no, literally try to take 3 deep breaths and see the change in your physiological response. See the change in the calmness in your mind. It's huge. So just noticing when there's a tension within you and breathing.
Yeah. Powerful self-reflection is so key, man. So.
Yeah. And then keep listening to hear Anthony's podcast.
All right, man. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, sharing your story with us, all your insights. We talked about so many different things within this, right? Showing up is a big concept. And just being able to evaluate these things and improve upon it and be a model for what is possible, having empowering community and knowing your values, living in alignment, and having integrity throughout your day, and just learning how to communicate, self-assessments, like all these things they work in synergy. And it's a journey, right? It's about showing up, and it's not about being perfect. And you mentioned, like, we're doing this. This is how we live. But how are you doing it? So which path do you want to choose, right? It's up to you. So it's been an honor.
A real pleasure. Thank you, Anthony, for making this possible.
100%. If people would like to get connected with you and your work, where can we go?
You could go to trevorstevenson.com to find everything there. My Instagram is Fun Road to Freedom, and LinkedIn, Trevor Bryce Stevenson. And yeah, I just love having these conversations with people, especially if they're trying to get started on their path, or they're down the path somewhere and they have stuff to share. I love being in conversation about this stuff. So please reach out.
100%, man. Thank you.
Thank you.